I remember seeing the whole river go back. That was amazing.
How many years has it been?
26 years.
26 years.
I don't know exactly what happened to them or where they went to. I think everybody knows, but we're trying to deny that part.
So 1998, that's the last place I was able to catch some ooligan. We didn't even know that was the last chance.
This rock split because our community was split.
People talk about crown land, it belongs to the crown. It's like, no, it doesn't. It was never ever transferred. It's never been ceded. It's never been surrendered. It's never been traded. It's never been lost in war.
There is no Indian settlement on the land in question. That's the day Francis Bull started introducing smallpox at Bella Coola.
Oh my goodness.
So there will be no Indians. It was an intentional mass killing that's being carried out for political purpose.
I think about all of the people who died during smallpox. People were crawling into graves that they had dug.
Digging your own grave.
Less than 1% of our people survived after smallpox. So we descend from the strongest of the strong.
No matter what we face, no matter what catastrophe befalls us, we have that resilience built in right at the beginning, right back to the first ancestors, to pick ourselves up and to rebuild.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Carolyn Talks YouTube channel / podcast, where I, your host, film culture critic and journalist Carolyn, I speak to film creatives around the world about their work in the industry and what inspires them. And today I'm very happy to be joined by my special guest today, Qwaxw, who is a radio host in Nuxalk the Nuxalk region of British Columbia, and we're here to discuss a film which he is featured in called Ceremony by Banchi Hanuse, and it is a documentary about the ooligan, the return of the ooligan to the Bella Coola River. And I will admit, I was not familiar with the name ooligan before watching this film. I had to look it up, and I did some research, and the fish is also called candlefish, which I have seen mentioned before. And the reason that this documentary was made is because it's very much about land sovereignty for the indigenous people of Turtle Island, otherwise known as Canada. And it's about how important it is to preserve nature, how important it is to cherish nature. But it's also talking about the present struggle that the First Nations people in Canada still have with dealing with the Canadian government, otherwise known as the Crown, because from the moment the colonizers settled on Turtle Island, they've had the agenda of eradicating traditional culture, eradicating traditional people and their beliefs and everything to take possession of this land. And this film very much deals with that. But before we get into that, I'll ask Qwaxw to say a bit about himself and about being a radio host. Like, I think you're the first radio host that I'm ever interviewing on my channel, so I'm very excited to have you join me today.
Right on. Well, thanks for having me. Insta Qwaxw, as colegas Dominito, we Nuxalk First. I am Qwaxw. I'm also known as colegas from Nuxalk territory. I was born and raised in the Nuxalk territory, off of the land, hunting, fishing, berry picking, those sorts of things. And then the radio station, it was created out of the energy of the so-called Idle No More movement back in 2012, 2013 era, in there, I believe it was. And 4 of us came together and we shared in a meal and talked about how we could capture that energy of that moment. As we knew it would dissipate over time, we wanted to grab onto it and turn it into something tangible that could continue that work. And one of the ideas brought forward by Sinchekila, he mentioned our elders had wanted our own radio station since back in the 60s, I believe it was. So we grabbed onto that idea and we turned it into reality. And we did it in secret in a way. We kind of launched and no one really knew who was behind it or how it started or whose voice was on the radio, as I digitally altered my voice so no one would know it was me. And we launched Nuxalk Radio in 2014. And I was one of the first hosts of the station. and I've been involved ever since, off and on as a host and in the background. So it was quite the journey, and we're going strong. We have a full staff and broadcast 24/7 now.
Can you say a bit about that movement? You said it's the I Don't Know movement?
Yeah, all across Turtle Island, nations rose up and demonstrated and, showed their strength that we are still here as Indigenous peoples. So we wanted our voices to be heard. And all across Turtle Island, there was all sorts of rallies and celebrations and yeah, it was just a beautiful moment in time of all the Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island standing up together. It was a real powerful moment, and we wanted to capture that energy.
What particularly sparked that movement? Because let me see, was it when there was the protest for water sovereignty in the US? That was before then, correct?
It was all interconnected. I don't remember exactly what the spark was, but there's like Wet'suwet'en, all that was going on, I believe, around the same time with the pipeline through the Wet'suwet'en territories. And the Mohawks stood up in unity with them and did a bunch of blockades of rail lines and all these different things. So there's a lot of different pieces going on over the years, and it was a long time ago now, and I don't recall exactly what was the actual spark that triggered the so-called Idle No More movement.
Yeah, because we're in 2026 now. That was that was over 10 years ago. A lot has happened in that 10 years. And you said something interesting about the radio station. Like when it started, you use a voice modulator to kind of disguise your voice. What was the decision to do that? Why did you want to like kind of hide your voice?
Just a little bit of shyness in a way, and also just to have that mystery and intrigue so that people wouldn't know who it was. We just didn't want it to be me. I wanted the radio station to be the radio station.
And when did you decide to stop doing that? To just let people hear you to be the voice of the radio station?
When I first went live, really, was we pre-recorded things. Was when I would change my voice, like recording stories and things to upload. So I changed my voice so that it didn't sound like me. And then when I switched to being a live host, I was just myself. But people figured out who the voice was anyway, because just you can tell it's me.
They were like, "This sounds like Qwaxw." Like they were like, like he can't fool us. Right. So the film ceremony, it starts out very interestingly. It starts out with one of the subjects in the film, and that would be Nuxalk. Like she's at the bank of the river, and she talks about having these dreams about the ooligan, about the film, about the fish being in the river and everyone running to the river and saying they're here with their nets. And it's basically a dream of how things used to be in Bella Coola, about how fishing for the ooligan was a community event, and then in doing a little bit more research on the film, like this was these are fish that were fished not only all across BC but all across northern Turtle Island, because I watched some couple of videos where they're fished in Alaska as well, so like these were fish that this was not only just a community event in Nuxalk, but it was all across the First Nations and Indigenous communities, and having that, and the film starting that we talking about the dreams and about how your people very much not only in tune with nature in reality, but also in tune with nature in their dreams, as well. I want you to talk a bit about that, because in the film, like we see like you doing the radio interviews and you're talking about, like the research being done on the ooligan, and you're talking about people trying to figure out what happened to the ooligan, because in the 1990s the fish runs collapsed, like they just kind of vanished. And talk to me a bit about that, about your own perspective on like how dreams are such an important aspect of like Indigenous culture, and like that's a way like nature to speak to you and for the ancestors to speak to you.
Mhm. Yeah, that was Megan Moody at the start of the film there.
Oh, that was Megan. Oh, okay. I wasn't sure because she was backing, so I wasn't sure. I wasn't because like the scene takes place with her backing the camera, so I wasn't sure. So I apologize. That was Megan, and she's a researcher. Yes, I apologize.
Yeah, that's all good. Yeah, no, dreams are an important part of our realities. We get a lot of different messages and stories and teachings through our dreams. You know, some are just feel like dreams, but you can also have dreams that feel so real, like you're transported somewhere else to a different place and time to experience something that you're meant to witness and experience. And that is given to you as a gift in a way to bring out of the dream world into the physical world we occupy and to share those experiences with others to help guide the next steps, perhaps, moving forward.
Yeah, like I'm from the Caribbean, I'm from Barbados, so like dreams are like we believe that dreams are very strong. You know, like we believe in like premonitions, you know, like dreams, like if you dream something and you have a very strong reaction to it, like it's something that can happen. Like for me, I have very, very vivid dreams, like very colorful dreams. And I always have like dreams within dreams, which is kind of it's always a very weird experience being aware that I'm dreaming, but not being able to like step out of it. But I can also, and I was talking about this with someone recently, about being able to step back into my dreams. You know, if I wake up, I'm able to like step back into them consciously, right? And so when I watch films like this, like where they talk about how dreams are people, dreams can be a premonition, but it's also like a reminder, you know. And like I think the film kind of like that dream plays a part in this, because we find out that the fish begin to come back, you know, and it's like, but the dream takes on two types of different meanings in the film. You know, at the beginning, it's like a lament, you know, it's this sadness because it's like you want this thing to be real, and you wake up and you realize it's not. But then at the end, you realize, oh, it is real. And I thought it was a beautiful aspect of the film. And there's a part of the film where you go into the forest and you are with Muscat. Like, no, I'm saying the right. It's the correct person. Is Muscat? It was I'm getting tongue twisted.
Nusmata.
I'm getting tongue twisted. And Nusmata, where like she takes you into the forest and she reveals something to you that you hadn't known about before, and you've been living in this area your entire life, and she reveals that there's a part of the forest that is a gravesite. And I'll admit, I genuinely got emotional at that moment, because being from the Caribbean, of course, and my own ancestry being tied so close to colonialism and slavery, I always find this kind of kinship with regards to like indigenous people, where our people have been so violated by colonialism, you know, by white people, and where they've done these unimaginable horrors to us. And a lot of it has to do with never being able to fully understand parts of our history, because like it gets hidden from us. And I saw that as being represented in this scene where you go into the forest and you learn something new about your people that you had no idea. And what you learn is that your people, there's hundreds of people buried in this forest, and the reason they're buried there is because they were like this man Francis Poole. I read up on him. He spread smallpox all across Turtle Island, all across North America, intentionally, systematically, to wipe out the indigenous people. It was mass murder. It was genocide, right? And for the people in Nuxalk in particular, like about 90% of the people died, and so many people were sick. They took themselves into the forest and they buried themselves. You know, and you said that you said that, and you said that phrase in the film. You know, like they dug their own graves. Like, talk to me a bit about what that was like for you. You know, and like not only discovering this part of your own ancestry, your own history, which is just there, but having to like realize there's still so many horrors that have been committed at your notes that you're still learning about, even at your age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was an interesting sensation because it was such a peaceful place to stand, and it was a beautiful forest, and then to realize that people went through such agony in that exact same spot that I was experiencing joy. It was such a range of emotions all at once, and just to try to imagine what it must have been like to dig your own grave and crawl into it and bury yourself. It's unimaginable. It's like I just, my brain doesn't function to think about how they could do that, to have that strength, to realize that there was no one left to bury them, and so they had to do it themselves. And that wasn't just at that site. We have a lot of mass graves all throughout the region, all throughout our territory. And I don't know where they all are, and I didn't know that was one. And when she shared that with me, it was really an overwhelming moment.
Yeah, because Nutsmata took you there because when we introduced you in the film, you are by the riverbanks and you are going to this area of the river where your family had their own ancestral but I'm not sure. My brain keeps saying fish cleaning because that's what we would call it in the Caribbean. But it's like this spot where after you fish, you do your fishing, you go and you prepare the fish to extract the oil because ooligan is extremely oily because of the omega-3s. But this is where your people would go. You prepare the fish. You have community sessions with it, with the fish, with the family, and it's just this communal experience. And I thought it was really interesting how the film is kind of structured, where a lot of this film is about unearthing truths, and it's about like digging through. And that's the thing about, like, for humans, like, in order for us to find things out, we have to go digging. We have to we always, like, unfortunately, the truth is never just sitting there. We sometimes have to just go searching for it. And I kind of saw that, like, with you, like, something that you do routinely is go back to this site and you're constantly taking down the bush. You're taking out just clearing that area so you can unearth these memories from your own childhood, of like doing these things with your father, and you're looking at the bricks and say, oh, we have to do this to push the ground back so that we can roast the fish and all of that. Like, talk to me about, like, having to do that routinely, because you weren't able to fish the ooligan for so long. Like, many of these practices got buried, but by time, you have to, in order to keep the memory alive, you have to keep going back and unearthing them. Talk to me about that process and, like, making that almost like a ceremony in and of itself. That's kind of a personal ceremony for you.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It was an annual routine for my family. The same time every year, we would go down to that same spot and clear the brush and prepare the site, get everything ready for the return of the ooligan. And no, I continue to do that every year, just so that, just for myself to remember, and also for others that who might walk by and ask what I'm doing. What is this? The little ones, they have no idea what the site was used for. So it's a teaching tool in a way, as well as a way to keep it alive in my own memory. And it's every year goes by, and it's another year that we haven't used the site the way it was meant to. And I hope that someday I can continue cleaning it every year, preparing it every year, and the ooligan will return in numbers enough where I can make grease there again, and have to keep the memory alive in myself. As my father passed away during the filming. It was 10 years of filming, so in the first 6 years he was alive during the filming, and then he passed away in 2020, and since then it's just been me now. So I have to carry that memory.
Okay, so that scene where you were at the fishing site, that took place after your father had passed away. Okay, first of all, my condolences. I wasn't even aware the filming was going on that long, and that your father had just recently passed. So my condolences on that. And what was it like for you having that experience kind of filmed, like, because you said it took so long, and, like, the film was 10 years. And what was it like for you, like, going through the motions of, like, unearthing the site, going through that ceremony yourself, but having it be filmed, and, like, it may seem like a strange question, but this is a question I generally answer for, like, documentaries, because each documentary is different. They're talking about a different topic, and But when it comes to documentaries that take place in real time and you're dealing with people who are going through extremely emotional moments during filming, like there's something that has to be done where you know, sometimes you might have to take a step back. And for you, like, what was it like for you having that being filmed? Like, what kind of discussions did you have with Banchi about that?
Well, I have a lot of trust and I'm comfortable with her, so there wasn't a whole lot to discuss. She just asked if they could film what I do. So I just went and did what I normally do, and they just kind of kept their distance and, you know, asked me a question here or there, or asked me to explain what I was doing. And I was happy to share, to teach. Really, it's for those who come after me to learn from what I'm doing and what the site is for. And it was just, you know, what I do every year. So it was just routine for me, and it was straightforward. And again, we grew up together, so we're really comfortable with each other. So it was quite easy to share with her.
And because the filming took so long, like so many, I kind of clued in that it took at least a number of years, because the house that Nuxalk was building with her son, it started literally on ground level. Like it started as a frame, and then by the end of the film, it's a full house. And I was like, did it take like 2 or 3 years? Because her son's girlfriend was pregnant. And then I'm like, this is a toddler, but I'm like, how old is this toddler? So like, what was it like? Like, talk to me a bit about how that time, like watching the film being done in that time, like how much has changed in your community over that time? Because, you know, and I kind of saw the way at the film kind of like, the film is talking about the ooligan and how much it means to your people, but I kind of saw it as this way to bring the community back together, you know, like especially at the end, we get to see the kids going into the forest and they're being taught about nature and about the trees and everything. And like, you now have this new generation being taught about something that they didn't know. Like, and that's a very rare thing, I think, to experience, because especially in the age that we're living in now, where so much technology, I'm 42, right? So I'm a millennial. I was here when the internet became the worldwide. I was here when the internet started, you know, and kids these days, we can't take them back to the before time. You know, we can't take them back to before the internet. But in watching the film, it made me think about how for your people, you have such a unique opportunity, and you're being able to take the kids back to a time where the ooligan are coming back. You know, they're refilling the rivers again. And like, talk to me about how special that is, you know, about watching your community grow in this way. Like, you were there when it was when they were in abundance, and then you were there when they kind of vanished. You know, you were there watching them slowly come back, and you were getting to watch these kids have this experience of watching life return back to your rivers, you know, and to your community.
Yeah, it's really quite beautiful to witness all of these things, as difficult as it can be. There's also a lot of beauty within it. So, for these young children, their whole lives, the Sputnik ceremony, the ooligan ceremony, has been going on, right? It disappeared, wasn't done for a long time. I never witnessed one in my lifetime until we brought it back in 2014. And some of those children that are part of the ceremony, it's been a part of their life ever since they were born. So their whole life, they've had the chance to witness this ceremony. So it's a whole different world for them to grow up in and be a part of than it was for me. So we had ooligan and we didn't have the ceremony. Now they have the ceremony without the ooligan, and it's making a comeback, and hopefully they'll have the ceremony and the ooligan by the time they get older.
So the ceremony started at the same time you started the radio station, the same time. Oh, okay. So like, that's kind of serendipitous in a way, you know?
And one of the very first things we used the radio station for was to call the people together for the ceremony. So we needed help to carry the totem pole, the ooligan pole, down to the river from the carving shed. So we called the community together using the radio station, and raised the pole up at my family's grease camp.
Okay. And for your work as the radio host, like, because so much of your work is that you're doing like these announcements and you're gathering people together, you know, and like, what is that like for you, just as like that responsibility? of being the radio host, and that you are kind of like, you would say, like the voice of the community. What's that responsibility? I'm getting so twisted again. What is that responsibility like for you?
Well, to be honest, I have to pretend that nobody's listening to be able to be myself on the radio. But I just do what I'm asked. A lot of my life, I get asked to do things because I'm good at them, or because that's my gift to share, and it's my responsibility to step into those roles when asked. And so, if I'm asked to do those things, I'll do them for the people.
And another responsibility you have, like you said, you hadn't seen the ceremony performed before then, and then there's scenes in the film where the ceremony is happening, and you kind of take part in it, and I'm always interested in, because again, like in my culture, do we have ceremonies like that? Not really, because like so much of my culture is informed, unfortunately, by British colonialism and British cultures and stuff, and the church. And I grew up in the Protestant church and Seventh-day Adventist, so a lot of our traditions and cultures kind of revolve around that. So I'm always fascinated by indigenous cultures, and indigenous practices. And for you, like, what was it like having that experience for the first time as an adult? Because I kind of saw it as something special, where you get to experience this extremely reverent moment, and you made the distinction where the ceremony wasn't done when the fish were abundant, but then because the fish were no longer there, the ceremony had to be done. And what was it like for you being a part of that ceremony in the moment, but then realizing, oh, okay, the fish are starting to come back, and I had a part in that? What's that like for you?
Well, it really made me appreciate the wisdom of those who walked before us, our elders and our ancestors. So they put all the pieces in place for us to find and piece together. Like the ceremony, the dance that is done, the name has to be held by someone to do that dance. And the name was put on someone, and they ended up taking on that role that they're responsible for. It's their duty with their name to do that dance. The song was put in recordings. The teachings of what the ceremony looks like were all recorded by our elders in our language. So we had to learn our language to learn the ceremony, to find the pieces, to stick them back together, to do the ceremony for the first time. So just really, I was in awe of, the foresight that our ancestors at the time had, and their trust in us to piece it all together, to turn it back into reality after they were gone. And then to see it come to life was a really special moment. And now this year, I'll share the main dancer who dances for the ceremony. He was teaching his daughter now. So it's beautiful.
Yeah, and you mentioned the music. So in looking at the film's website, it says that you are the singer-songwriter for one of the songs featured in the film. Explain a bit about this, the process of like creating a song. Was the song created for the film explicitly, or is this a song that was created for this ceremony and it's used in the film?
Well, the song in the film was created by Nuxalk Radio Records. Siltlani was her work behind the scenes, but we don't have any modern music in our Nuxalk language. So we came together and called the community together to work on an album that would all be 100% in our language. So we brought in a producer who recorded us and just made us comfortable and recorded some things, and he made songs out of what we recorded. And the song that's in the film, I was almost tricked into recording. He said it was just going to be background music for someone else's song, but he turned it into its own song. So it was unrelated to the film in a way, but they're connected through the radio station, as was the radio station that created that album.
Okay. And I think it's amazing, like you're able to like rediscover your own language through song, because song and spoken word and sung word is completely different. You got to restructure the language to flow in rhythm with the song, and it's thinking about that, and like so much of indigenous culture revolves around music. You know, it's about being in tune with nature, and it's about being in rhythm with each other. Like as a radio host, you also have to use music as part of your work, right? And talk to me about that. You know, about finding the correct song to use for the topic you're discussing for the day, you know, or you're like you create it. Because for me, I'm not a radio host, so like all of my work is pre-recorded and I publish it and stuff, but music is not a part of my work as a film culture critic, you know. Like I only have like intro music and outro music and that's it, you know. Like music isn't part of my program. But for you, like how do you go about integrating music into your program? Especially because you said like the station runs 24/7 now. Like that's nonstop. That's like you have to like use music and everything.
Yeah, we have several different live shows through the day, and then there's some syndicated. And I've had a few different shows over the years, but as an example, I had a show called Moons and Stuff, as I have a science mind, and so I was applying science to our stories, trying to understand the science behind our stories. So I would have my idea of what I wanted to talk about in my show, and then to keep people's interest, you have to, you know, you can't just have an hour of talking about science and stories. So I got to throw in some modern music, some upbeat songs and things. But I would try to pick songs that somehow related to the topic that I was talking about. And it was like one of my topics was about the solstice, how the sun stops in the sky and changes direction. And my analogy was, you know, like a baseball getting pitched and hit by a bat. It physically has to stop before it goes the other way. That's what the sun does during solstice. So during the break, I played, you know, John Fogerty Center Field as a song. It's about baseball. So just things like that, just trying to find connections.
Okay, so which particular is your particular science discipline you're interested in? Well, you mentioned just now was a bit of physics. That was kind of a physics. Is physics more like your interest, or are you more like a general studies kind of interest in science?
Yeah, physics has always been an interest of mine. That is, I went to university planning to become an engineer, but then I changed course and ended up in forestry instead. But yeah, physics has always been a really interest of mine.
Why didn't you pursue the engineering?
Because I wanted to be outside. And registering for my second year, I was looking through the calendar and I was like, that looks really interesting, you know, learning about plants and fish and just all the outdoor stuff caught my eye, so I went into that instead.
Oh, how long are you still working in forestry services, or even though you're working with the radio station, or is the radio station your full time? That's now your full time. You're not dedicated to that full time.
Yeah, it's kind of reversed now where the radio station is in the background. I'm more behind the scenes there now as the technical manager, and I work kind of in forestry now, I guess. I'm the CEO of our economic corporation. One of our companies is our forestry company.
Oh, cool. There was a time where I wanted to be a marine biologist, but alas, I did not pursue, because now I'm here doing film criticism. I've tried doing many things. I wanted to be a biologist and I got my diploma in paralegal studies, and now I graduated and I'm like, you know what? I love film. I think I want to do film coverage full time. Yeah, and another thing that I really wanted to talk about is faith. Like you mentioned, the ceremony, you know, like the ceremony started being performed in 2014, and you said the film took 10 years to film. And there's a point in the film where I had this thought in my head where Megan and her brother, who's also a scientist, they're at the river and they're doing all of these, they're doing like their field studies, you know, they have the nets in the water, and they're saying, oh, there's no hooligan. But in my head, I was also thinking there's nothing in the nets. There's no fish in the net at all, which means that there is no sign of like life in the river. You know, the water's flowing, but I'm like, how do you have a net down for a whole night and there's no fish, no crabs, nothing in it? And like the ceremony is being performed year after year after year, and I had the thought in my head, but what if and she says the hooligans are going to come back, They're going out every day. They're looking in the rivers. They're going in different sections, and they're saying, and they keep looking for the fish. And in my head, I had this extremely pessimistic moment where I said, but what if the hooligan don't come back? What if they don't come back? What if they don't come back? Like how like they keep going out, and they're like, oh, there's none here today. There's none here. And it was just so pessimistic. It was like, but Carolyn, the whole point is like they have faith. So I'm like, so why can't you have faith that the fish are going to come back? I had that whole discussion with myself watching the film. And then at the end, like we see them, they're like, wait, there's one, then there's two. And then there's like, her brother's like, look, there's seagulls there. And it kind of goes back to this animation in the film where like the seagulls were used as like as a signal that the fish were coming back. They're coming to spawn, because if you see seagulls, if you see eagles, that means there's fish in the water, right? And that moment happened, and it was like, you see, Carolyn, faith, and so like to me, a lot of the film is talking about faith, the faith that people have to have, that the things that they lost can come back, and I want to ask you about faith. Like, how important is faith to you? And like and like just in and how perhaps seeing the hooligan come back maybe reaffirmed your faith in not just the fish coming back, but just in life in general. Because especially with everything happening now, like I despise AI, and I'm just like, I wish AI would just disappear because it's destroying the environment. And I have to keep reminding myself, like, I can't fall into despair. I can't be pessimistic. There has to be hope. There has to be some kind of hope. And watching the film, I got a reminder of that. I'm like, Carolyn, don't be pessimistic. You can be pessimistic, but at least don't let it overtake you. Like, have a little bit of faith.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm reminded of one of our teachings that one of our elders passed on. That is a saying, "Smaudi silk ich." It means basically one heart or one mind together. And that's the power of kind of what you're speaking of there. If we all put our minds together and think in a good way about something, that's a powerful force, and that's part of what the Sput ceremony or the ooligan ceremony does. It brings us all together at the same place, time, and we all have our minds together thinking about the return of the Sput. And doing that year after year after year, doing that every year at the same spot, at the same time of year when they're supposed to be there, that turned into reality where they started returning. So it's just the power of the human body and our spirits. When we work together in a good way, anything is truly possible.
And in seeing the fish return, and you're seeing the spoof prove that the faith is tangible, that the faith is rewarded. How have you seen any other changes in your work in forestry showing that, like in Barbados we have this saying like, like the ocean reclaims itself, the ocean, like humans can build, but eventually nature will reclaim what belongs to nature. Are you seeing any signs of that in your work in forestry that's showing where nature may have been started to like collapse a little bit, because there's things like so much climate change is a big concern right now, climate change and weather change and like deforestation and all of these issues. But have you seen any other signs of like this faith being reaffirmed in your own work in forestry?
Yeah, well, the forestry practices have really changed over the years. What we do now is nothing compared to what they did in the past, where they would log, entire valleys right over the river. And that would have such negative effects on everything downstream. And we're just now at the time where those valleys are healing, where the trees are growing back. They're still young, but at least they're there now. And so it takes a long time for change to take place. Well, long in terms of a human lifespan, but for the planet, it's just a blink of an eye. We're doing our best to adapt moving forward to minimize the effects and eventually have positive effects on the environment rather than negative. So it's we're still in a time of transition, and that's part of my role. I see that I'm in right now is to push for that change where it's less industrial and more ecological moving forward.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like humans, we can destroy things just like that, but it takes so much longer to rebuild. You know what we've destroyed, and that's something that just angers me. I'll be honest. Like I'm always just like, why is it so easy for us to destroy, but it takes so long for us to fix and repair? You know, and it's just like, and it makes me sad and it makes me very angry. But that's where we have to put in the work. You know, we have to keep performing the ceremonies. We have to keep working at it. We have to keep showing the dedication and trying to show like earth, you know, like we are sorry and we have to atone for this, and the atonement takes time. The atonement takes takes dedication, you know, like if we and that's something that I always struggle with, you know, like it's so easy for us to destroy, but to repair takes almost an infinitesimal amount of time, and we can't ever repair it back to what it was before, you know.
And that's where the importance of our, our teachings that our ancestors passed down are so valuable moving forward, as we lived in a highly productive ecosystem for thousands of years, and we had wealth of foods, and no one was hungry for such a long time, that those skills are in our stories. So we need to relearn those and be able to piece them back together again and activate them as well. Similar to the Sput ceremony, there's so many more pieces to different puzzles our ancestors left us that we still have to find and put together and learn. And it'll help not just us in Nuxalk territory, but I think the world needs to learn these things from us. And that's part of why we are still here, why our story is being told, and why the world needs to stop and listen. To move forward together in a good way, we all have to come together as the human race and put our minds together and work together.
I agree, because like watching the film, this is why I love doing what I do, and I love watching films like this, because I always look at film as being very at an educational medium, and this made me learn another part of like Indigenous history here in Canada, you know, because I knew of the Francis Poole and these men going around across Turtle Island, going from America straight up here into Canada using smallpox to systematically eradicate people because they want to claim the land. But I didn't know of the Nunuk people before, you know, and so I'm learning now about your community. I'm learning about your people, and in learning about your people, I see so many connections and similarities to my own ancestry, my own history. But again, of course, like what's going on now in Palestine, you know, like the same methodologies are being used there. And even being used here, if we look at how like our healthcare system is being systematically destroyed, you know, to make way for capitalists, you know, and I think films like this and stories like this and stories of your people are a reminder for us to say like we have to be very careful, because we don't want to push ourselves to a point of the precipice that we can't come back from, you know, and like that there's always an opportunity to take a step back, you know, to a time to perform a ceremony, to fix things and take it back to the point of that we can come back, you know. And my last question for you is, in like you're going to be here in Toronto soon for the film festival, and people are going to be watching this film. But for those who can't watch the film, you know, listening to the YouTube, watching YouTube, my mom watching our interview today or listening to it, is there anything that you want to say to people who would be watching or listening to this interview?
Yeah, just share our story and learn from it. You know, it's being told for a reason. You're hearing it for a reason, you know, and apply it to your own life. You know, our stories from our lands are passed down through our people for thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands of years. You know, and we've survived all sorts of things over time. We have great four great catastrophes in our teachings, and we now have modern catastrophes that we've survived. And our people, we're down to 1% is my understanding of our population survived the genocide. The Nuxalk Valley alone was over 8 to 10,000 people, and that was just the one valley. And our territory is vast. And after the genocide, we had 250 people left. And from that, we managed to maintain our identity, our sense of humor, our love, our willingness to share what we have with those around us. So there is good in the world, and it exists all over the place. Humans are good creatures, but you need to step back and reflect and learn your own story. Where is your past? Where are your ancestors from? Where is your connection to your lineage? How far back can you trace it? We've been here in the same spot for tens of thousands of years, and modern day, a lot of people move around. You ask someone where they're from, they tell you where they live. No, where are you from? Where 400 years ago, where was your great, 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 great grandmother from? Where are you from? Not enough people know that anymore. And for the world to walk forward on a healing journey, everyone needs to understand their own individual history. And hopefully our story helps people be inspired to learn their own lineage, their own stories to share. We all have stories to tell, and this is ours.
Yeah, that's and you see, I love that you said that about asking someone where they're from as being more about understanding their past in history. Because for like someone like me who's an immigrant, there are people I don't get upset if people ask me where I'm from, because I'm Barbadian. I'm proud to be Barbadian. But there'll be people who be like, but I'm American. And someone will be like, no, but where are you from? And they'll be like, meaning your racial ancestry. But the thing is like some people get upset with that because they're trying, they take it as the question meaning like you don't belong here. And with that question coming from someone who's being racist, that is what is implying, like you don't belong here. So like, where are you from? But then like, I love how you're framing it as it being about where are you from? Like, where is your history? Like, how does your history connect to this land that we're on? This country, this planet that we're on. It's like where are you from? Like, how do you connect to Earth? So thank you for saying that. I think it's a really great way to reframe it, and to kind of like rethink that question, like where are you from? Like for me, someone would ask me where I'm from. I will say I'm Barbadian, but I know my ancestry is in West Africa. More than likely Benin, I believe. And so like for me, even though I've yet to be to Africa, I've yet to be what I call it. I always say it's my ancestral homeland. That having that knowledge makes me care about where I'm from, like what happens there. I pay attention to what's happening in my ancestral homeland. I pay attention to the politics. But in living here as well, I always pay attention to what's happening here. I claim the title of an immigrant because colonialism says being an immigrant is bad. And I'm like, being an immigrant is not bad because you've survived this extremely emotionally intense situation. Moving from one home to another home takes a lot out of you. And moving here, I'm always cognizant of the fact, like I always say, this is Turtle Island. This is indigenous land, like this is not my ancestral home, but I respect it as though it is. I respect the struggle of the people that are here. And so I appreciate you reframing that phrase, where are you from, for me. And I want to thank you personally just for that, because that's something that I have to keep reminding myself. Like, we are all from somewhere eventually. And I had the thought when you were talking just now about, about teaching people, and about like going and like about using the platforms we have to teach people. And for you, like I have said before, that was gonna be my last question, but for me, this is gonna be my last question because I know you have to go soon. But for me, like, what is, you mentioned the 4 great catastrophes. just now in your culture. Can you say a bit about that? Because I don't know what that means. I'm assuming, but I don't want to assume. So can you explain what that means a little bit?
Yeah, in our stories, we have the four great catastrophes, is how we describe it in English. We have the falling of the sky, the burning of the world, the flood, and the famine. So the falling of the sky was long time ago. We have what we call in English the four carpenters who were tasked with preparing the world for us to fix it so humans could live here. So it wasn't suitable for us, for these physical bodies to exist. So they were working on fixing on the planet so we could be here. And they were fixing the sky, and they were holding the sky up with these tall posts that somehow kept the sky in place. And one of them failed and collapsed, and the sky collapsed, and it killed a whole bunch of people. And then I mentioned I have a science mind, so I'm trying to think, okay, what is the science behind that? When was that? How long ago would that have been? One of my theories is, for example, it might be when the Earth's magnetic field flips. Magnetic field collapses, the sky falls, and then people get killed from the sun's energy. So that might be one interpretation of the falling of the sky. Then we have the burning of the world, where it's a long story, but the basics of it is that the sun got way too hot and burnt everything, and people had to hide and live underground. Then we have the flood, where the ocean rose. It was like a high tide that didn't stop. The water just kept rising and rising and rising. So our people took down our houses, lashed our canoes together, and turned our canoes and our houses into rafts. Then we tied them to the mountaintops so we could stay in our territory. And a few of the ropes broke, and we lost, canoes of people who drifted away. And some think they might have landed, on the Pacific Islands, the Maori or the Philippines or all around Hawaii, where people ended up somewhere around there. And then the famine, the fish stopped returning, the berries no longer made fruit, and food was scarce. And it was so scarce that if you saw a fish jump in the river, they would swim over or go over, paddle over to where that fish jumped and scoop up the water and make soup out of it. So we had what we call fish jump soup, where they would just hope to get the taste of fish as it was so rare. So those were the four great catastrophes that our people have survived. And each one has different teachings on how to live your life as an individual and together as a community. And it's a part of survival, and those old stories are important moving forward as things repeat. Things are cyclical. We'll face similar times again in the future, and we need to keep those stories alive so we know how to continue to live in this physical existence.
Yeah, and just listening to you explain the stories, I started thinking of like certain things that happened, in our geological past. Like people talk about the comet destroying the dinosaurs. Like the flood would be me growing up in the church. It would be the biblical flood with Noah's Ark and all that kind of stuff. And that's why I love like human history. There's so many things that people always say, oh, like these cultures and everything is different. I'm like, not actually. There's many similarities, a lot of things that converge and kind of reaffirm each other. Like this culture is from like all across the other side of the planet, but their indigenous cultures have very similar stories that reaffirm like how connected human history is and how connected humans are. So thank you for sharing that for me, and I'm glad I asked because now I learned something new today.
And I wanted to share one last thing with you to add another level to the where you're from conversation.
Let's do.
Our teachings are that we are supernatural beings having a physical experience. So these human bodies, they're temporary.
Yes.
They're just a structure we occupy and make use of to experience the physical world. But our spirit occupies it, makes use of it, and then when this body dies, our spirit moves on and can return again. And so I think that sometimes people move around on the planet. They feel drawn to certain places because their spirit may have originally been from that spot, but they were born in this physical body way over here. So their journey for that spirit is to get that body back to its homelands, which might not match up with where they're from, but it's where their spirit is meant to be from, or where it was from. So I just wanted to add that layer in there as well. So that's important for people to understand, for, talking about immigration and things and not welcoming people. But in Nuxalk, we welcome all sorts of people to live with us if they respect our teachings and want to live with us, because they might be a Nuxalk spirit occupying a non-Nuxalk body, and they're returning home. So wherever home is for you, that is home.
And that ties into the dream, to our first discussion about dreams, because before I moved here in 2009, but my sister and we came to Canada in 1999 because our dad used to live here like years ago in the 90s and the 80s. But I remember distinctly, I used to have dreams about parts of Canada that I had never been to before, and they were super vivid dreams. When I moved here, I remember distinctly, it was about a year after I moved here. I was driving down the street we were in a car, we were going somewhere, and I had this extremely strong sense of deja vu. And I was like, I know I've never been on this street, but I know this street. I'm like, I remember these buildings. And I asked my dad, I'm like, Daddy, when we were here in like 1990, I'm like, Miss Charlene and I were here. I'm like, did you drive us down this street? He's like, no, I've never taken you here. And I'm like, I know this street and I've never been on this street before. Right. But so there's these things where, again, it ties into, that's how I see dreams, dreams as like this connection to like things that we have yet to experience, or things that we've experienced but we can't explain them. So like I do that. I have like I'll have a dream, and I always like tell myself, if it's a dream I remember, it's something that's gonna happen. If I can't remember it, it's not gonna happen. But if I remember this thing, I'm like, this is probably gonna happen. I just don't know when. I don't know when. But so yeah, I kind of see like the connection to what you're talking about. Like that's like our spiritual selves talking to our physical beings, trying to send us these clues about like, just be aware, just pay attention to what's happening, and you'll find your way eventually. And I have to remind myself of that. I have to remind myself, don't be pessimistic too often, Carolyn. Be more positive.
Well, in our teachings, deja vus are an affirmation that you're on the right path.
Oh.
As it's said that before we descend and occupy the physical body that we're going to live in, we're shown our entire existence as that physical body.
Ooh.
So you're shown your whole path before you arrive.
Okay.
So that's why deja vus are so powerful, is you were shown that before you were born and came into the world as physical.
I need it to tell me if I'm going to get money. I need it to say, I hope it tells me. I hope I get people say, Karen, don't worry, you're going to get money soon. But thank you so much, Qwaxw, for taking the time for talking with me. This was a joy.
To find a good recipe that makes money taste good.
Please.
That's what's so fun.
Please, if I don't get a chance to meet at the festival, I'm glad I got a chance to speak with you. And thank you so much for sharing a bit about your culture and your people with me. I truly appreciate it. And congratulations to having the film shown at the festival. And congratulations on the fish returning. I hope it returns in great abundance to Bella Coola.
Right on. Well, thanks for sharing our story, and thank you for sharing your gift with the world. You have special gifts. Hold on to them and share them.
Thank you. I will hold on to that and keep that as affirmation that what I'm doing is good and that it matters. Sometimes I'm filled with doubt. I'm like, no. I remember Qwaxw said I have a gift. I will listen.
Yeah. Well, your ability with the dreams, that's a special gift. I gave you two names at the start, Qwaxw and Ashqalagas. Ashqalagas is a name I just recently received, and it's a medicine name, a shaman name, for lack of a better term. And it means one who can walk or travel or visit different worlds. And the dream world is another world. So you have that ability as well to walk in multiple worlds. So it's a very special gift that you have.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Qwaxw. I hope you have a good day. And when you come to Toronto, I hope you have a good time in Toronto too. You're coming at a good time because it's finally feeling like spring. Because our winter lasted forever and it was terrible. It was gray and dreary, and outside is finally looking like spring. So you're coming at the right time.
Right on. Well, hopefully our paths will cross there, and if not there, I'm sure they will cross again sometime.
Eventually. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Why, thank you.